morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Tech Talk webinar, Presidio's monthly technical forum that provides a deep exploration of the industry's hottest topics. We are proud to bring you together with Presidio's technical experts with the goal of keeping you educated and aware of new technologies and trends so that you can make the best decisions for your business. On today's webinar, we will discuss data protection for hybrid clouds. Hybrid cloud infrastructure is changing the way businesses digitally transform, leveraging the best of both on-premise and multi-cloud infrastructure capabilities. As hybrid cloud infrastructure becomes more critical for business success, data protection plans become more essential. We do ask during the session you please remain muted and use the chat box for your questions, which we will address at the end. Also, everyone will receive a short survey at the conclusion of the webinar. If you could take a few minutes to complete it, we will send you a Presidio travel mug with a Starbucks gift card. Thank you in advance for spending this time with us today, and I am now pleased to introduce you to our presenter, Raf Meyerowitz.
Thank you very much, Sarah. With me today is Srinivas Pukuri. We are going to go through data protection for hybrid clouds. We're going to talk a little bit about cloud tiering to AWS. We'll follow that up by a demo. We'll then talk about data domain, cloud disaster recovery of VMware virtual machines to AWS, and follow that up by a demo, backing up native AWS workloads with Avamar in the cloud, and we'll follow that up by a demo. Then we'll move on to recovery of on-premises backups in AWS, followed by a demo. So just by way of introduction, when you look at data protection today, data protection pretty much is everywhere, right? Your data protection strategy needs to involve multiple different layers, right? You may have best-of-breed technology in your environment. You may have converged infrastructure, hyper-converged, software-defined. You may even be doing things as a service, or you may have a multi-cloud environment. A lot of customers today have multi-cloud environments and oftentimes neglect data protection in that multi-cloud environment. So when you look at it as a strategy and you look at these different consumption models and the protection silos that you need to protect today, there are different ways to protect this, right? You can do this through continuous availability, through replication, snapshots, backup, archive, different ways, right? But what really is important to understand is what your recovery time objective and recovery point objective is. The recovery time objective is how long it's going to take you to actually recover that data. The recovery point objective is, well, when was my last backup or my snapshot? And the two kind of need to meet in the middle to form an SLA that would be appropriate for your business. So again, when you look at protection solutions throughout your journey to the cloud, right, there's different ways to do things with data protection. You can have just private cloud backups, which is historically what most customers have. You can extend to the cloud. You can do in-cloud protection, and you can do backup as a service inside of the cloud as well. And we're going to talk about all of these today, and we're going to demo these technologies today. But the world has definitely evolved and changed. You know, a few years ago, customers were just interested in, well, I need to back up my data in my data center, which could be deemed a private cloud, and then I need to replicate the backups. Well, today, with some of the things that customers are using, not just software as a service applications, but actually starting to consume more and more applications and virtual machines in the public cloud, it's important that all of these are touched upon and all of these decisions are made, and you have a data protection strategy that can encompass all of that. So the first piece that we're going to cover is cloud tiering to AWS, right? So a lot of customers today, they have data domain in their environment. Data domain, as an appliance or purpose-built backup appliance, is a leading appliance worldwide for purpose-built backups. Presidio has many, many customers that have data domain in their environment today, but the way that customers would do things before is they would put a data domain in the production site, then a data domain in the DR site, and replicate between the two. What has come about is obviously the public cloud, and customers are saying now, well, I don't need to replicate all of my backups to my data domain that's in another site. What I can do is I can have long-term retention copies that I can basically copy to some sort of public cloud or private cloud provider. So the way that works is you pretty much have, doesn't matter what backup application you have. Let's say you said, okay, on-prem, I want to have 1 week retention or 2 week retention of my backups, but for compliance reasons, I still need to retain those backups for, 7 years or a year or whatever the case is. Instead of storing all of the data on data domain, what I can use is I can use long-term retention, and I can push those jobs to the public cloud for long-term retention. So Srinivas, why don't you go ahead and show us the demo on cloud tiering to AWS.
Sure, thank you, ma'am. So here I would like to go through the demo for setting up the cloud tier with the data domain and how it functions. So basically, this is a recorded video, and I'm going to walk you guys through it. So here we have our data domain, which is on-prem. That's the IP address of the data domain, and we logged into the data domain interface. And here we are looking at the file system. So the file system that consists of a data domain cloud tier along with the active tier. So the active tier is the storage which is locally on the data domain, and the cloud tier is the storage that has been set up in the cloud, and that's basically set up by generating a cloud unit or adding a cloud unit on the data domain. So in this case, here we are seeing the cloud unit called DD61 Cloud Tier, and we have it integrated with Amazon AWS. And what you're seeing here is that we have 1 terabyte of capacity on the AWS, which is extended as a cloud tier. And what we are also seeing here is adding a new cloud unit and see how seamless it is to add a new cloud unit into the data domain. So in the dropdown, you had various choices like Virtustream, Azure, and AWS. And we selected AWS for this demo. We picked the storage region, and then we have to provide the AWS programmatic account information, which is your access key and secret key. So once you provide that information, data domain will automatically add that cloud unit as a valid entity available for extension. So here we are seeing, so we have an existing cloud unit called DD61 Cloud Tier, but we also gone through the process of adding a new cloud unit, again, both pointing to the same AWS, but the point is to show you guys how easy it is to extend data into the cloud by having a cloud unit. So here we are seeing that we have our cloud tier, DD61 Cloud Tier. I think the video is repeating. Sorry guys, bear with me a moment. Okay. So here we have so the data domain, so we can run some commands to look at the cloud units on the data domain. So we list the cloud units. We have the DD61 Cloud Tier and then the Cloud Tier AWS. And we have a profile associated with the tier. And that's what we are seeing here, DD61 Cloud Tier profile, and it's on AWS. So by running the commands, we see that both cloud units are showing up within the data domain. Now we want to show you guys, this is my AWS interface, and you see these long names here for the buckets, the S3 buckets. These buckets get created automatically as part of the process of creating a cloud unit. And here I would like to go through the process of extending your backup data into the cloud. It's straightforward. It's similar to setting up a replication policy within Avamar. So here we log into the Avamar and then get into the data movement policy, and then we modified the long-term retention to cloud policy, and this is where you specify your destination, which is your DD61 cloud tier, and it says it's active, and the expiration is basically, it matches your expiration policy that you have for your backup types. In this example, I showed you the monthly backup being replicated into the cloud tier. So it's straightforward as to how to set up a job to extend your backup data into the cloud. So once the job is created and the data is replicated or extended to the cloud, you should see those data objects in the corresponding S3 bucket in the AWS, and that's what we are seeing there. Also, the recoverability is straightforward. We just have to pick the day when we have the backup in the cloud. So in this case, the day 29, we just have the backup in an active tier, but if you go to a previous date, like the 5th, you do have the backups extended into the cloud, so that data resides on the cloud. So the restoration is seamless as well. We just select the file that we want to restore, and it's a straightforward process like how you have your traditional recoveries. It's the same process for doing this one as well. Raf, over to you.
Good, thank you, Srinivas. So the next part we're going to talk about is cloud disaster recovery, right? So we spoke a little bit about how you can basically move things from long-term retention up to the cloud, right? One of the things that customers are asking about is, I have a VMware environment that's on premises today, right? And I want to replicate to the public cloud. I want to replicate my backups to the public cloud. And then also what I want to do in the public cloud is I want to make sure that those VMs can actually come up in the public cloud. Well, if you think about it, right, VMware Hypervisor typically is VMDKs that you have, right? But if you're going into the public cloud, it's a different format. It could be an AMI format, a VHD format, depending on what type of public cloud you're going to. So what we're going to show you here and what we're going to go through is how you can back up your VMware data on premises, replicate it to AWS. Avamar will actually proceed with the conversion, where it will convert the VM from the VMDK into an AMI format. So what that does is it really eliminates your data center costs, your footprint, and compute cycles that are required. So maybe you don't need a DR data center, maybe you can just get by replicating your backups to the public cloud. So the way that this works is, on the left-hand side, I have an Avamar VM that's being backed up, right? I back up the VM, it protects it directly from on-prem into S3, and then it leverages the existing data protection that you have in your environment with Avamar, and it's a simple operation through the same view that you have today. So again, just from a high level, right? On the left-hand side, you have a customer. They have on-prem backups. You have Avamar. Could be virtual, physical, with data domain, without data domain. I back up the VM. It reads the VM. It sends it to its virtual appliance, right? It compresses and copies it. Sends it to AWS S3 bucket. The CDRA communicates with the CDRS, right? So it deploys it in AWS. When it comes to actually recovery, you say, okay, I want to recover in AWS. At that point, it automates, converts it, deploys it, and runs it. So you're not getting charged for EC2 and EBS until you actually want to fail over. So all you're getting charged for inside of AWS is your AWS S3 bucket and your images. So we spoke about CloudDR and CloudTier, and I just want to make sure that everyone understands the differences, right? So what CloudTier is, right, it's on-premises, CloudDR is also on-premises, right? But the use locations, the use cases are a little bit different, right? When you look at CloudDR, it's meant for disaster recovery. CloudTier is meant more for long-term retention, right? CloudDR, your data location is pretty much copied to S3. With CloudTier, your backup data from data domain is moved to S3, right? So if you're looking for recovery from CloudDR, you're looking at typically most recent backup. With CloudTier, it's typically going to be your older copies, right? With recovery, we can orchestrate instances in AWS and automate that and recover inside of AWS. With CloudTier, it's data recovery that's on-prem. So on the top there, right, you'll see day 1, day 30, year 1 up to year 7, right? This is kind of the way that I look at it, right? CloudDR is meant typically for disaster recovery that you're looking to do pretty quickly in the cloud. When you're looking at data domain CloudTier, it's really something that maybe your compliance officer is asking you to do and saying, we need to retain data for 7 years. And instead of you purchasing another data domain, you'll just end up using CloudTier for that. All right, on to the demo.
Thank you, Raf.
Thank you.
So here we would like to go over the demo for setting up the CloudDR environment and to show you guys how easy it is to set up the replication jobs into the AWS. So basically here we have the diagram for the CloudDR environment. So on-prem we have the Avamar and data domain. It could be physical or virtual, and then we have our VMware environment, and we have the backup job setup. We also have deployed a CDRA appliance, which is a virtual appliance, and that's on-prem. And there is a auto-deploy functionality within the CDRA, which we leverage to set up the CDRs in a much more automated fashion. So basically, once we configure the jobs, all the jobs are set up through Avamar. So once we configure the jobs, the backups will happen. And if the policy says that the virtual machines need to be replicated to AWS, so it will do the backup, and then the CDRA will pick up the new backup copies and then replicate them or copies them over to the AWS into the pre-designated S3 bucket. And on a need basis, we can fail over the environment or the respective virtual machines into AWS. So here we are seeing a VMware environment with the CDRA appliance installed in the VM environment on-prem. It's a straightforward install. There's not much to it. It's an OVA appliance. And once it's installed, we web into it. That's the IP address of the appliance. So there's a web interface to get on the CDRA. Once we get into the web interface, we get this nice dashboard. And it's this dashboard that we use to set up the environment. So initially, we provide the basic information as to the hostname, IP address, and things like that. And then we have the cloud account that we need to set up. The cloud account has to be AWS in this case. And then we set up a cloud target. A cloud target is name of your cloud target, basically. It's a logical name, so it's called DD Cloud DR in this case. And it's set up in that particular region, US East 1, and we predetermine the storage bucket that we use. Once we provide that information, the program will go ahead and implement a CDRS appliance in the cloud. CDRS is the Cloud DR server. And once the CDRS is installed, it gives a name, and that's the name that we are seeing here. And you can also validate that CDRS exists in the AWS, and that's what we are seeing here. And this particular instance has been deployed by the CDRA that we used to set up the environment. And then we also need to provide the information on the vCenter that we have on-prem, along with the Avamar server that's on-prem, as well as the data domain that's on-prem. So once we provide this information to the system, that indicates that the configuration has been completed, and now what we want to do is web interface into the CDRS. So basically, yeah, here we are just re-looking at the screens just to make sure everything is good and happy. But so we just click on the Cloud DR server, and then that takes us into the CDRS interface. So we log in with the credentials into the CDRS, and here we see the dashboard of the CDRS. This is different to what you saw earlier. The other one was CDRA interface, and this is the CDRS, and it gives us information on how many VMs are being protected by the CDRA by the CDRS environment. It also gives the system health information, showing us that the CDRS is able to communicate with the cloud as well as on-prem, and everything is happy. It gives us the usage as to how much storage capacity has been used and how many activities are running. So let's see how to set this up. So basically what we do is create a new policy within Avamar, and here it's called Cloud DR new policy. The important thing to note is that any policy that you create that needs cloud protection has to go under that the vCenter subdomain within the Avamar. So continuing forward, so we have these two VMs protected, and then we have those are the two VMs, CentOS 3 and CentOS 4, and that's the CDRA that's in use for protecting these. And it's happening on a nightly basis. And let's see how to set up the job here. So we have this Cloud DR new policy, and then it's straightforward as to how the job is set up. The new tab to look for, if you are already familiar with Avamar, the new tab to look for is there's a Cloud DR tab, and in the Cloud DR tab, we need to make sure the Enable Cloud DR is checkboxed and the respective Cloud DR target is selected. And we also put the retention as to how long you want to keep your copies on AWS. Other than that, everything else is straightforward. We just select the members, which VMs are part of the job, basically. And that's about it from a job creation standpoint. And then now we want to go over the process of performing a recovery into the cloud. So that's straightforward as well. You just use the Avamar interface and do navigation, backup, and restore, and select the image where the copy is on the cloud. So that's the remote CDRA that you guys are seeing here. So select the remote CDRA, and then you just want to say you want to perform. So there are two types of recoveries that you could perform. There is so you do a DR now, and then you have a DR test or a DR failover. A DR test is something that you could spin up on the cloud and then verify that your information is accurate, and then you could failover if you like. So the wizard is straightforward. You select the network that it should come up on, and then you just hit OK. That's about it. You can also look at the status of the recovery that's happening. You can see it in two different places. Here we are looking at the DR activity monitor in Avamar, and it's showing that the progress is 4% at this point. You can also get on the CDRS interface and go into the recovery activities, and here you see that that particular VM is being rehydrated on AWS. So essentially what's happening right now is the VM DK is being converted from the S3 into the AMI, and then it's simultaneously building up the EC2 instance for that respective VM. So after some time, it takes some time. It takes it's not instantaneous. It will take an hour or two depending on the size of the VM. But once the VM is completely failed over or DR tested, you see that it's successful. Now you see the 100% as the progress bar. You also see the same information on the CDRS interface. So it is 100% on the CDRS as well, which essentially means the VM is up and running. So let's get into the AWS console and take a look at the VM on the AWS console. So that's the VM right there, Srini-CentOS 4. Basically, that demonstrates that the VM has been successfully brought up in AWS. And once the VM is there, it's your choice if you want to end your DR test or if you want to proceed with failing it over. So you have those options of ending the DR test versus failing it over. That's about it for this video.
All right, thank you, Srinivas. So the next piece that we're going to be discussing is backing up AWS workloads with Avamar in the cloud, right? So a lot of customers today have deployed some sort of applications or moved their applications to public cloud, such as AWS. Just because an application has been moved to AWS, it does not mean that the data is actually protected. In fact, if you look at this agreement with AWS, it actually pretty much states that protecting and backing up your data is something that you have to do if you basically manage that public cloud. Amazon or AWS is not responsible for that. The same actually applies when you're looking at Azure. So backing up with AWS and Azure, there's pretty much two different ways of doing this, right? So today, if you had an existing backup application that you wanted to leverage, whether it was something other than an EMC backup application, you could continue to use Data Domain Virtual Edition in the public cloud, right? Data Domain Virtual Edition with AWS supports up to 16 terabytes per instance. With Azure, it supports up to 15 terabytes per instance. And you can also deploy the full data protection suite, whether you use a Networker, Avamar Virtual Edition, all of the DD Boost functionality, the BoostFS, the replication, the encryption, all of that functionality is the same whether you're using it in the public cloud or on-prem. The next piece of this is something that was launched about 2 months ago, and you're probably going to hear a lot more about this within the next year, is VMware Cloud on AWS. So what VMware Cloud on AWS is, it's basically running VMs in an AWS data center in a software-defined data center. Okay, so you're going to be able to spin up your own software-defined data center with VMware Cloud on AWS. What this is showing is basically you're going to be able to use backup and recovery functionality, which under the covers is Data Domain and Avamar with AWS, and it will be basically natively integrated into VM Cloud on AWS. Srinivas, go ahead.
Okay, guys. So here we want to demo the capability of being able to back up the workloads that are born in cloud using the Avamar and DDVE that we have in cloud. So here we want to, so this is the demo for backups in cloud. So here we have the AVE and DDVE deployed as instances, EC2 instances in AWS. So that's the IP address of our hostname and IP address of the DDVE and AWS. We also have a Red Hat virtual machine as a test case here to perform backups of. And that's the hostname of the Red Hat VM. So here we are on the Avamar, and this is the Avamar running on AWS. So it looks exactly the same, so there's no difference as to how the Avamar is administered or configured. So here we have the client, we have a client agent installed on that Red Hat VM, and the client has been registered with Avamar. We also have the data domain, the DDVE, running in AWS, and that has been integrated with Avamar as well. Again, it's all identical to how you do it today on-prem. It's exactly the same way, except that your instances are running on the AWS. So we set up a backup job, and then we have some backups happening into the AWS, and we also have, interestingly, we also have the replication set up back to on-prem. So that's what we are seeing there, but we have another video coming up on validating the replication functionality, but just wanted to show you guys that we have a replication set up as well. Raf, back to you.
Thank you, Srinivas. Okay, so next piece we're going to cover is recovery of on-premises backups in AWS. So today, you can replicate the public cloud with DDVE, right? So there's different ways to do this. You may have a on-prem data domain, right, that you leverage it for on-prem backups, but you want to continue also backing up in the public cloud with data domain virtualization. So what you could do in that situation is you can replicate from DDVE to DDVE, or you can replicate from DDVE to on-prem data domain, or vice versa. I think we're going to cover both those demos.
Right. Okay, so now we want to demo the capability of replicating into the public cloud, as well as we want to demo capability of being able to restore the replicated data into the public cloud. So here we have here we have an on-prem Avamar and data domain system, and then we also have the Avamar and data domain system that's running in AWS. So we have two Avamar systems basically here being shown, and that's the hostname of the Avamar running on AWS, and that's the data domain IP address. So basically, we want to look at the replication setup. So if you go to the on-prem Avamar system and get into the navigation data movement policy, then we have a policy, we have a group created called replicate to AVE in AWS, and it's pretty much it. It's exactly how you set up replication between two Avamar data domain systems today. It's the same process, nothing different. You just choose your members on who gets replicated into the AWS, and that's pretty much it. So the destination is AVE in AWS, and that's the IP address of the destination Avamar system running in AWS. And you could set up your backup job expirations as to how you want. Like none of that changes. You're still having the same usage experience as to how you do currently. And here we have, I'm now on the Avamar running in AWS, and here I have this replication job for replicating backup data from AWS back into on-prem, and that's what we are seeing here, and that's one of the VMs that we selected to replicate back to on-prem, and that's the hostname of the on-prem Avamar system. And like I said, it's still seamless as to how you can set up your replication jobs similar to how you do today. And now we want to go through the process of doing a recovery of the backup that has been backed up on-prem and replicated into AWS. So here we just want to take a look at your environment. So right now we are on the AWS-based Avamar system and the corresponding data domain, and we are in the backup and restore section, and we expand the replicate domain, and we see the on-prem Avamar showing up in the replicate domain, and then we see the clients that got backed up on-prem and replicated into AWS. So that's that Srini-CentOS1, and we just want to pick a folder, restore it into the Red Hat EC2 instance that has been set up in AWS. So here we are just selecting the file that we want to restore. And then here we are on that particular EC2 instance, which is running in AWS. And I have a folder called restore from on-prem. So that's our destination folder that we will be using for restoring to. And we just go there, select your folder, which is data, and then provide your destination client, which is the client running in AWS. And pretty much it's straightforward. It's still the same process as how you do today to do the recoveries. Redirected recoveries, you just have to specify the folder, and you will be able to restore that way. It's straightforward. So let's go through the process of select the folder, the destination folder, and you just hit OK, and that will initiate the recovery of the VM data, not the VM, but that folder into this AWS-based EC2 instance. So there it is. We just initiated the restore, and the restore completed successfully. So basically what we demonstrated here is being able to replicate your backups on-prem into AWS, and then restoring a subset of data into one of your workloads running in AWS. That's about it. That concludes the demos that we have for today. Raf, back to you.
All right. Thank you, Srinivas. So we can open it up for Q&A. Also, if you have any questions, you can email myself, raf@presidio.com, or Srinivas.Pokuri@presidio.com, and we'll get back to you fairly quickly. Sarah, I think over to you.
Yes, thank you both very much. I don't see any questions coming through the chat box on my end. Like Raf said, they have some contact information there if you do have any questions. But you can also send a note to techtalk@presidio.com if you'd like as well. But thank you all for joining us today, and thank you, Raf and Srinivas, for your time. And we hope you all can join us again next month. And thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you.